Welcome to Cross Platform Podcast, where we discuss how to solve productivity problems across platforms. I'm Augusto Pinaud,
And I'm Art Gelwicks.
and today we're talking about Todoist. And we are going to start, hopefully, a series of episodes on specific applications that we use and tips and stuff that we can give to cross platform people. So today we're going to be talking about Todoist, and I will let you start.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just to frame this up for people. I mean, we've been talking about this during the post-show and pre-show time periods, not just Todoist, but just ways we dig into things. And we figured it makes sense. We talk a lot about applications that we use and we don't use. So we're going to start grabbing the ones that we know hit multiple platforms and start digging into them. Now, we're not going to be doing a how-to type of thing. More what our experience has been with the application, how it's worked for us, how it hasn't worked for us. Do we actually actively use it or not? Would we recommend it to someone else? Just to give some our own perspectives on these applications that we know are one, popular, two, powerful, and three, are almost always raised in the discussion of, is this something I should be using as part of my platform? Todoist, if the name doesn't give it away for you, if you're unfamiliar with it, it is a task management application. I don't know that I would necessarily call it a project management application, although I've heard people try to refer to it as such. I don't think it has quite that same level of power and capability, but it is available on Windows. It's available on Mac, is it not? As
It
a
is
native
available on the Mac.
application?
It is
Okay.
available at PWA, iPad, phones, obviously, iOS,
Right.
iPad OS, and Android.
Yeah. So it's one of those applications that they are supporting the development of it across just about every platform out there. I mean, honestly, there's an Aware OS app that ties into it so that you can work with your to-do list from your phone. I mean, there's a lot. This is one of those applications that you do not have to be concerned as to whether or not you're going to be able to use it on your platform. The odds are in your favor that your platform is going to support whatever's necessary to run this application. Now, that said, task management is one of those goofy things that everybody's like, oh, I want to do this and I want to do that. But there are some basic things that all task managers have to do. And based on my experience, I think Todoist does the basics pretty well. Allows you to capture tasks rapidly, allows you to organize them easily, and allows you to track and execute them to completion. Uh, it allows you to go back and segment those tasks for different ways of viewing them in aggregate. So, at its most basic, yeah, I kind of think it does the job. I mean, it does what I would consider the price of admission. What do you think?
Well, I tend to, when I work with people, companies, I tend to ask what is their view on task applications. And what I mean with that is your interest or your organization interest to be on personal productivity, or you are more interested on collaboration. Okay. And when you get into collaboration, or what I call organizational productivity, the game change. So if you are interested on personal productivity, and the difference for me is on pure personal productivity, it's not about collaboration. It's about how good and solid my system can be so I can move forward faster and I can keep track of what you owe me or what people owe me or what I owe people. That's personal productivity, the silo that communicates to the outside. When you talk about the organization productivity, you are inverting that. You go from the outside to the inside. And most of that management is public. There are tons of applications trying to do this concept, and most of them fail. And most of them, in my opinion, fail because they try to be more project management than a task management. When you are trying to manage tasks for an organization, one of the most important things is a concept that is task based communication. You need to communicate those tasks. It's not anymore about where are the weakest link and how I'm going to protect it. That is one of the principles of personal productivity, but how we can move this together as fast as possible. Those two concepts are very important. If you are looking personal productivity, Todoist a great tool, but uh, you don't care about the communication factor. When you come now to that, what I call organizational productivity, this the sharing and the ability to interact into to do it make it into Todoist make it invaluable. And I we will cover another application that I recommend for this that is Nosby, and I'm a certified Nosby trainer. Um, and they are really the only two applications I recommend for this. Why? Because it allows really to do task-based communications. It allows you to add information, attachments, and really collaborate inside of the application. You don't need to have the chat, you can have everything in one place. And when you are talking about sharing this, that is very important because the communication of each task is now key to be able to move things forward. So, because of that, I work and recommend Todoist a lot because the sharing again, the ability that you and I have to have a project in Todoist that we both can go in, that we both interact, that we both get information instead of thinking where the communication happened with Art. When is that he's going to send me, or where did he send me this? No, no, everything related to project A is there. And that make things very, very effective.
For basic tasks, and that's what we started off talking about, I would agree with you. Uh, honestly, I think it struggles on a couple of levels as you start to press it up the tree. It's absolutely not project management because to
It's
me,
not.
project management is not so much about collaboration. It is more about relation between the tasks. Task relationships does not exist for all intents and purposes within Todoist as compared to other project management applications. So I wouldn't even line those two up on the same starting line. However, you're right. Todoist is very good at if you have a shared task listing for multiple people, being able to update the information about those tasks, attach files, things like that. You can certainly do that within the application itself, and it's not a bad way to do it. I will say that Todoist does have a bit of a learning curve. It's you would think it's fairly intuitive, and it is, I would say, for the first 20 to 30% of using it, creating a task, updating a task, completing a task. For that part, absolutely. Its most powerful capabilities, though, do require a bit more planning and a more forethought. The filters and labels capability, working with the natural language entry, which I think is one of the greatest strengths of Todoist. Its ability to, rather than say, have 18 different little boxes to select when you go to enter a task, being able to type in a task that says, take out the trash every Thursday until March 31st, and it understand that and turn that into a viable repeating task. That's extremely useful when you think about that price of admission to getting into managing your tasks from a basic structure. I do like that capability, and I think they've done it well. I recommend that people look at Todoist, but I don't know that I necessarily recommend it superior to other options. Excuse me. Excuse me. If they're at their most basic level, if they're just starting off with task management. Well, sorry. So let's take it past step one. And let's now start to look at what are some of the more, I want to say, Todoist featured features, for lack of a better name. What are the things that you have used in Todoist that you think highlight? I've already talked about the one that I think is probably the most important, which is the natural language entry.
Mhm.
But what's the one feature that if you excuse me, you could say that Todoist hangs its hat on it? What would that be?
For me, is collaboration. Okay, and again, agreeing with you, this is not a high level project management. This is not going to compete with Microsoft Project in a big project. There is no zero. This is for a small, maybe a medium company, okay, who have a small things that don't need to be managed in a Microsoft project. But they are projects at the end of the day. This is a perfect. The other thing is the ability to have for those environments your personal and your professional side all together. One of the
Mhm.
things I work is with families, okay, and teaching the kids and teaching the parents how to interact with the kids in this interaction. I remember when I started that with my own family, okay, and getting the kids. And to this day, I can tell the story. And recently my wife said something and to my kids, you need to finish your responsibilities. Okay, they live in a task management application, and Tomas, my son, he's 10, and he looked at his mother and said, well, my list is done. And the mother looked at him and say, well, you have not done your clothes, you need to fold them and put it in the closet. And he looked at her back and say, no, that here says due on Tuesday. Today's Sunday, I'm not going to do it. Okay, and given we laugh as parents, okay, how the kid find the clever exit out of this, but from the other perspective, he has been work now into this so long that yeah,
Mhm.
in his brain make total sense. No, sorry, that task is not due today. It's due on Tuesday. I don't need to do everything that was due today is done. And they have come to me and say, can you add this? Some of the stuff, especially the due dates and how you make it repeat every 3 days until this date and those kind of things. They ask for help, but many of the things they do themselves and then maintain. And I always share this with clients. Say, when I ask this question, when did you learn to use a task management? And most people, the answer is on my first job. Some people is on my second job. Okay. And if you at home make it as we do, okay, where they have used that thing forever, they know where to look. They send messages, okay, about the task when they have questions in there. Okay. But they know that all the communication happens in there. When they are fundraising for the school, they know to upload it in there and do the comments in there. It looks like I remember many years back, okay, reading when David Allen gets into interviews and people saying, oh, well, your communication with your wife about doing this way via email sounds very mechanical. And I, when I explain this to people, I have heard the same thing. Well, I don't want the communication with my kids to be that mechanical. I say, no, 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 no. The communication with your kids will be incredible. The communication with your team is going to be incredible because it's going to be real communication. It is not
Mhm.
what is in most cases. That is, did you finish? When you are going to finish? When is the update for this? When we work into Todoist and we implement solutions like this, again, in small companies, okay, more than large corporations, this is not a project management tool. Okay. But we get that, and we get now the owner or the manager who can come in the middle of the night when he wake up and look at whole the story of what happened and be able to ask the questions there in the comments. Okay, when you as a parent come and the kids are sleeping and you look at this and say, when this is happening, and you can leave the question in there, and now for them is automatic to the point that they will respond to you in there. Okay? This way of implement the tool is completely priceless.
So when we start to think about taking a tool like this, I mean, you're talking about people who may not natively use task managers. And I think what you just talked about truly stresses the importance of the term task manager. It's
Mhm.
designed to help you manage the task. It's more than a checklist. It's more than a punch list. And you see that in many applications. And later on, as we dig into things like OneNote, they have the capability to do checklists, but those aren't task managers. They're not tools that help you facilitate situations like you have a task and it gets delayed or you can't do it today. What do you do with it? How do you handle
Correct.
it? Being able to do things, some of the features that I like about Todoist, some of the strong ones, the ability to take a list, copy and paste it into Todoist, and Todoist looks at this list and says, "Oh, you've got 18 items on this list. Do you want me to go ahead and create 18 tasks out of this?" That's really powerful because it doesn't force they're not forcing you to utilize the user interface that they've constructed. They're saying, look, if you're sitting somewhere and you just make a note, say in like Apple Notes or on your phone or in Notepad, doesn't matter, a list of things off the top of your head, that copy paste populates. And we both know that the most important thing you can do for a task manager is get the tasks in there because you can't manage them unless they're in the tool itself. But being able to integrate the tool with other tools is just as critical. Being able to do things like have your task list show up in Google Calendar or vice versa. You can pull things in from Google Calendar to Todoist. So it becomes that kind of central dashboard to all the activity that you're doing. Being able to create filters and say, only show me things that are due in the next 7 days, and it doesn't matter what project they're on. And project is a term that they use, but it's not really a project. But show me everything due in the next 7 days, or show me everything that's a high priority item, or show me everything for these two things, such and such. Being able to create those different lenses on the type of work that you're doing, that's one of the strengths that Todoist has that many other task managers have not fully implemented within their systems. They struggle with creating some of those structures. Um, Now, we've talked a lot about the good
Oh,
things of it. Go ahead.
and before that, I want to pinpoint something that you said that is very important. And again, one strength of Todoist is you can throw different level people and it still work. Because one of the problems when, I remember many years back, when you had Outlook, that was the option, an Outlook task. Outlook task, if you knew certain things, you could make it work very, very powerful. But when you throw now the basic user, okay, that thing fall apart. One of the cool things in Todoist is that if you have a team, okay, instead of have a weakest link, you can balance that to make everybody feel stronger. And regardless their level, okay, they can work together. I my son, he need to take the guitar every Tuesday morning. And you guess that that's something he will remember, but he doesn't. So we went together and create a task. Right? The task bips, and then he said by himself an alarm, so it remind me, because we are obviously in this family quote unquote project, okay, to remind me at 7:30 in that he needs to take the guitar. So the first time that ring, I look at him and say, this is not my responsibility. And he said, no, it is not, but it's great because it will beep on your phone. Normally we are in the car and I will remember that I need my guitar
That's
before we
that's
leave the
certainly a
house.
way to do it.
Okay, it's a way
The
to
the
do it. So
reminders cap the reminders capability is always a point of discussion, not only with task managers, but with other applications, being able to set a reminder on an action so that the computer does what it's really good at, the tech does what it's really good, which is doing the same thing over and over and over again. And every
correct.
60 seconds it goes through and checks and sees, is there anything I should ding you for? Again, that's one of the strengths, I think, of Todoist, its ability to set reminders incredibly easily using that natural language interface, being able to set especially recurring events. It's very good at that. Um, those are the types of things that, as a tool, I think gives it strength. Now, we have to do justice, and we have to call out where its opportunities for improvement are.
Of course.
I'll throw out one of mine. I think the user interface is a little dated. I think it's a little bland and a little boring. Um, it's not the most intuitive in structure. You'll find things like, for example, projects. You think, oh yeah, I'm going to create projects. Well, projects aren't really projects. It takes a little bit of thought process around how a project actually works before you can truly start to work with it as lists of tasks. The task structures themselves have gotten better. There have definitely been improvements in the user experience for editing and working with tasks, but I think that there's still quite a ways they can go with just updating and improving that user interface. That said, though, that those user interface challenges that I'm talking about are primarily on the desktop. I think the mobile interface is extremely well done. I like how the mobile interface works. I like how the mobile updating and entry and adding tasks. Uh, that's all. Yeah, they've gotten that pretty buttoned up, and you can see the time and the experience. And just based on having 5 million users, I think that was the number that I found. Roughly 5 million users has demonstrated to them that they can say, yeah, this is how we tune this application. But while I think it's good, I think there's probably still room for improvement with getting people more involved or the user interface more engaging. What do you
And
think?
and it works. But the interface will never be perfect. I agree with you on the project side. That project is misleading. And the reason it's misleading is because I cannot do a query out of that. I cannot do a list. So if I want to see a list of projects, I need to stick to this, and that doesn't work well for me. So I look at that, what they call projects, more as folders or buckets, and I
Mhm.
create projects inside of that because the way they call projects doesn't work for me. But it is perfect. No, it is not perfect. Do I have find a perfect one? No, I have not find a perfect one, or at least not for what I do. But what it does very well is that really let you play well between the person who don't care and the person who is a geek into this and everything in between, and that make it very powerful. And there is people who I have worked with in organizations where they don't care. Okay, and for those people who don't care, the application will work because people can assign the task, get the task, and get the information. But also for the geeks, okay, they will find that they can use templates, import, export. When
Yeah.
on the Personal Productivity Club, we have a call for Todoist, a monthly call, and one of the persons in that call have they do a specific kind of projects. It's a project who has around 100 different actions, and this person has created a template in Excel because the project doesn't change. As new clients come, this is the
Mhm.
onboard checklist, and this person can get it from Excel directly into Todoist and assign everything to the right people immediately. That save hours if this person need to do that process manually every time they do, or worst, you don't do it.
Mhm.
Because when you go to other applications and you don't have that ability, what happen is you don't do it. So you start managing the projects worse and worse and worse just because it's difficult. I don't have the 2 hours to create the project. Or you create that task saying create the project for onboarding a client X, but that never happened. So that's again as you said, the natural language, the templates, or the ability to use templates, it is very, very powerful. Do the interface can be improved? No question about it. But I have not found again one application that I say, oh, this is
Oh,
the
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 perfect interface.
the chase for a good UI has always been a battle. Like I said, they have made significant improvements over the years, and I will
But
give them props for this. Todoist makes a lot of updates. If you run the desktop application, almost every time you go into the application, at least once a week, you're seeing a notification that there's a new update. And you pull and the updates are instantaneous. I have never had an issue with an update where it's broken something or caused a problem. They're always usually fairly small. They don't do massive feature updates, but it's just enough to keep this constant progression and growth of the application, which I find is very endearing to me as a software developer at times. Couple of nice things I like right away, and then there are a couple of things that again I find frustrating. One, I love the fact that at least on the desktop, letter Q, you start a new note. You can start a new task, just hit letter Q, type it in. It's a great way to rapidly capture tasks. Makes it so easy. On the flip side, the thing where I think they're really missing the boat on is their idea of karma. Now, Todoist uses karma as a way of providing feedback volumetrically on the task managed or the tasks that have been managed. So you can see at any given time how many tasks you managed on a given day, in a given week, in a given month. You're able to go through and see a color aggregate, or I'm sorry, daily and weekly, a color aggregate based on the color tags that you've assigned to given projects, but it's so far short of being actual practical actable data that I don't know how it's helping anybody. I mean, they use things, they give you thresholds, and you can, you can get this grandmaster and enlightened and things like that when you get to certain levels. Uh, But again, the gapping is massive, absolutely massive when you get to the highest levels, that it doesn't do anybody any good. You can't even gamify using it. If you had the
Mhm.
ability to set your own thresholds, uh, that would make more sense. I think that would be fantastic, but they've never gotten near that. And I don't know if karma is one of those things that they kind of thought about and they said, "Oh yeah, that's fun," and just have left it sit there and wither and die, or if it's something that maybe they have a grand plan down the road. I couldn't tell you. You do have the ability to set goals within the system, which I do like. So you can say, how what's my goal of number of tasks to complete in a day, number of tasks to complete in a week. That's a very basic goal. I mean, we both know that often that goal can be gamed. I mean,
Right.
if you set a task to, to get 30 tasks done in a week, that's great. But if it's a repeating task every day, well, that's 7 tasks. Yeah, you got to fudge your numbers a little bit there. There's no easy way to go into the system and get any reporting whatsoever. You cannot see task breakdowns as to how many tasks, what tasks were completed on what day for what project, or in this project, what was the completion of the tasks. Uh, those are things, again, I think they're missing out on the opportunity to provide some very nice functionality there that would be extremely useful. And honestly, I don't know why they're dragging their feet on those. That's not something where you're building an entirely new interface. It's just, something very very straightforward that you should be able to turn on and have because the data's there, but apparently it's not that big of a thing. Um, the integration pieces, though, and this is something that this gets a little bit more down down the pike. When you start to look at a paid account, and just to talk about, Todoist has a free account. They also have a paid level. The paid personal tier, I believe, is $5 a month. The business is $6 per user per month for the business level account. But if you go in and you start to look at the capabilities once you have the paid account, especially around the integrations, that's they've got some nice integrations, integrating it in with an Amazon Echo, integrating it in with Outlook, with IFTTT, with Gmail, with your Google Home, integrating with Google Calendar, like I mentioned. All of those give you easy ways to expand that capability. I leverage the Echo one all the time because I have tied to my Todoist my Echo shopping list for my groceries. So that when
Mhm.
I tell the Echo, hey, I want this, normally it would show up in the Amazon shopping list, but I don't look at that. I look at Todoist. So being able to pass that information over is really useful. And I like that capability. So looking at those functions and those kinds of features, uh, you can see that this is a solid application. It's very difficult to go wrong with Todoist from an implementation standpoint. It can get overwhelming. And I don't know if you've ever run into this, but more than once, I've gone into Todoist and realized I had way too many projects. I had way too much stuff. There was just because everything got captured into there. And I actually had to spend more time cleaning up and administering the tool than I expected just because of the structures that I had created. Now, it's not hard to undo the mess that you make, but I have found, at least for myself, it's not that hard to make a mess out of it if you're not deliberate and careful and methodical about your approaches.
I agree. I agree with that. But I'm going to say that will happen on any platform or any program
True.
that you do. I don't think that's a to do is that's something that we can attach to Todoist. But there is something interesting from the cross-platform perspective. Because Todoist have the different applications and the different platforms, they also have the PWA. This is an application that I tend to recommend to people who work on closed machines. Why? Because most organizations, regardless how close is that computer, okay, you can install a PWA. Okay, you just
Hmm.
need Chrome um, Edge. So for most people, it is a possibility. And because you can have your paid account, then you can create a free one for that computer, for that machine, for that job. Okay. And now you have your personal separated from your professional, but living exactly on the same interface where you can send and interact with things all the time. So that make it very, very powerful. Again, there are few applications that you can do this. Todoist been one of those, but this is really helpful because now you can go and manage work in the Todoist, in the PWA, regardless how locked that machine may be. But now, when you exit, you can decide what you are going to share of that world with the rest of your world and even share it with other things. So I have a client,
Hmm.
for example, who have their job, but they have also a side business. So he had the three things converge into his to-doist. He will agree with you that his to-doist tend to be catastrophic, okay? But it's not because to-doist. It is because of the amount of input this person have. But it's now everything managed in the same way that
Hmm.
over the years, especially when we talk about task management, the people who have all these cross platforms, it is a complaint. Well, I need to manage work into Outlook and then I need to come home and do everything else in Excel. But during the day, it's very hard to cross pollinate. This can fix it. The other thing that another feature that I really like, even that this is not about the features, is the ability to create an email address where you can forward
Yes.
stuff. And that is very, very powerful. And when you apply what I just described, you can create even an email address for each one of those buckets. So that way you can
Hmm.
forward to the appropriate division. And that make it very, very powerful. Again, especially for those people who have this platform and complicated setups.
Yeah, I'm also a very strong advocate of the email in capability because that does bypass in many cases some limitations that you'll run into sometimes in business environments. You also need to take into consideration, and this is just something I've noticed from experience. One of the capabilities of Todoist is the ability to attach files to tasks, which is nice and useful. Todoist should not be used as a file repository.
Correct.
And in certain business environments, especially corporate environments, you may find that functionality does not work, or you will get flagged by systems and firewalls to indicate that, look, you're not allowed to upload files outside the network because it doesn't go through the scanners and things like that. So just keep that in mind when you start to look at this stuff. The bigger your organization is and the more robust the security and safety protocols that you have in place, you still have a likelihood of running into things. But that
Mhm.
said, perfect example of the types of things that we're talking about here. Going through when we do pre-show work and we're planning out a show, we have created tasks in Todoist, and attached to that task will be the thumbnail used for the YouTube video that goes along for it. Why is that the best place to do it? Not from an archival standpoint. Is that the best from an organizational standpoint? No. Is it the most convenient? Absolutely. Because we know exactly where that thumbnail is going to be. Now, another copy of that will live someplace else. I have that in my file stores. But when you go looking for the thumbnail you need to publish the show, you're going to go look at that task because that's where all the work, the administration of the execution of that task is being tracked and being handled. And like I said, Todoist is very good at handling that information at the individual task level. I wish they gave more support to aggregating that information to creating a greater overview, but I'll make the argument the more aggregate information that you're providing, the more you're moving away from task management and you're moving into project management. And there are other tools for that. So if that's something that you need to do, that reporting and that aggregated overview is a critical part of what you're doing, that's has to be a measure because that's not part of the balancing act that we're talking about here with this particular application. But for everything else, for that daily execution, weekly execution, yeah, I think this should be like in the top 3 of things that you look at when you're starting to look at tools. Or if you're currently using a tool and it's not this, you should give this thing a look and say, could I do it?
Yeah, that's correct, and that is important to. That's one of the things that is important to mention here with the cross platform. Where is the organization you are? And I tend to work more with small businesses where although some of those securities are not there, while you tend to be more into the larger corporations where all those securities are there, need to be taken into
Mhm.
consideration.
Now, now let's look at it from focusing again purely on the personal, because that's what we're really all about. This is one of those tools that I find its mobile interface, and I mentioned this earlier, is extremely well done. It is very easy to capture information on the fly, to pull up, to access, to update, to complete, all from your phone, all from your tablet. Because again, it is so useful across multiple platforms. This is one of those that it can become that tool you go back to all the time. And I would say that is probably my strongest measure of a well done application is if I go and try something else that does the same things as that original thing, and then I go back to the original thing, that is the definition of a good application because I keep going back to it, that I keep trusting it with my things. There are very few applications out there that have fallen into that designation with me. Todoist
Mhm.
is one of them. And it's one of those that, for better or worse, I will keep going back to it just because I know it works and does what it's supposed to do. So, eh, is there anything else you would recommend to someone who's looking at Todoist or thinking about looking at a way to accurately measure for themselves or get the best sense as to whether or not it's going to work for them?
Well, to do is do that free version, and I tell people test it, play with the free version, and before you go and pay. But there is a big difference the moment you pay for those $5 a month in the capabilities and the functions that you get. Um, that said, again, it is, in my opinion, a very robust application. If you are looking for something, you can use cross-platform. You can use that you are going to, it has enough customization to make it fun. It's enough easy to use if you just want the easy part, but it has a lot of legs to get complicated and to, as you
Mhm.
say, make it a mess. It depends really on what you want to do. But one of the strengths for me is that ability to allow that collaboration and really to make the collaboration easy and effective. I will love to have a better notification system. Again, it's on the shortcomings. It's not a perfect application, but it is very, very powerful still.
Yep, definitely one of those, and this is part of the reason why I wanted to start with this application, because this is a good example of an application that you really can't go wrong with. I mean, you may not find it fits your aesthetic or fits your feel, but for doing the job that is tasked to do, yeah, it does it. It does it well. We're going to find as we go through this over the coming weeks, there are other task managers that shine in certain areas and fall flat on their face in others. Note-taking applications, same type of thing. Calendars, all of these have pluses and minuses, and it's important to be aware of those before you start to dedicate a lot of time and energy into putting them into part of your platform. And as we
Mhm.
started with the beginning, does it work across your platform? You should have, and we've talked about this before, you should have your technology card, understanding what you're going to do things on and what you're not going to do things on. Are you going to do task management on your tablet? Okay, then you need an application that's going to work there. Are you going to do it on your phone? You're going to do it on your desktop. Are you going to share your task list with other people? It's very likely that you're going to have people that will never do that. They will never share it out with anybody else just because that's how they operate. That's fine.
Correct.
Doesn't change how the application works. It just means that that is a lower value feature for you. So, thinking about those pieces, I really think that this is one that is an excellent starting place, and I'm anxious to see what features they continue to add to the application over time.
Same here. Same here. I think again, it's a very robust application, and we will be talking more about different applications. But in the meantime, follow us where you like to listen to podcasts, like us, or subscribe to us and leave us a review. You can also interact with us on PersonalProductivity.club. There is a channel for cross-platform as well as a channel for Todoist, so you can go and play. But in the meantime, we are Augusto Pinaud and Art Gelwicks, and see you next time from your favorite device. Thank you.